back with you here on Wednesday, October 17th, and by request, today we polled the Twitter followers, and apparently there was a lot of interest in an update on Ripple. So I've got here now, this is Ripple to the dollar on Bitstamp. So, so anytime we're looking at the dollar now, I guess we have to deal with this tether issue. So let's just see where the volume is, right? Before we dig into this, let's take a look here. So again, I'm over here on this site that I like, Coin Checkup. Going to Ripple here. I'm just looking to see where's the volume. So I'm sorting this on 24-hour volume, right? So where is the majority of the volume? Well, number one is Binance to the dollar. So is the dollar tether. Then we've got Bitcoin, dollar tether, Bitfinex with the dollar. All right, here's Bitstamp. So we're down here at 10,000. Right, we could have looked at Binance here, but I'm going to look at Bitstamp. I think we have more history here. So let's get it up here now. So here it is on Bitstamp. So a couple of things that you can see right off the bat. So one thought is you can see how if we look at the steepness of these corrections, and we look at how they're moving, right? We can see this change as the angle, right? The intensity of the selling just continues to abate. So it gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and ultimately we end up in a double bottom down here, which is hard to see here on this, but you can see it here a little bit. So here's the first bottom here where we have an extreme on the RSI, and then here's our second bottom. So you can see as we come here, we don't get anywhere near as deep. Now we have had the return push back down here, but this was an inclination that perhaps we had some fuel there, and all we needed was a spark. And was it Trump saying he likes Ripple? Who knows what causes that is, but I was sort of kind of making that point here. Now we have to respect a couple of things here. I've shown these before here. So there's golden zone to target, right? So we tap the target twice. So you have a foundation here. You have a base potentially now for something impulsive to come off of this. The potential, nothing more than the potential for a trend change. Now we've had a good break through the Vegas wave here, but not enough here yet to where we can call this. We can't be definitive. We need one more kick up here. We need another kick so we can get a 5-wave structure on this. So let's just remove all of this drawing. So I'm going to go down from the 8-hour. Let's go down to the 1 hour. All right, and take a look what we got here. So here's our double bottom down here. Here's this first. I suppose you can make a case here that we have. I don't love that. Actually, I would be inclined to just call this a double bottom. We have this little wick down here, so my preference is, even though we have that little wick down here, to say this is the low end of our range, and all we have is a double bottom here. Yes, we get the wick through it here, so technically you could make a case that that's internal, but I just don't think that serves us. And so maybe you can get something. I think it's more likely something like this has completed here. It's a bit of an educated guess. That's the best you can do when you have that kind of straight up. Well, what can we conclude from it? Well, if we acknowledge this as our low here, and I'm going to use this low, so I'm just going to wick this off. Maybe we can make that case. All right. Well, so okay. All right. Let's check it. All right. So if we've got an impulsive structure, I get that right on there, and we come up, get it right on that pivot. Okay. So first move down, golden zone. So we know this swing low to this swing high is significant to the market. See a little reaction at the 50, golden zone. We push away. All right. Well, let's of course remember there's always an algorithm on the other side. Always an algorithm. So we come up here. And we have the potential, right, as I've shown this not too long ago, maybe you can make some sort of a, looks like that could be in here. So you have some sort of an ABC going in here, and now we're pushing down. So, right, so first thought would be, okay, there's an A, there's a B, and maybe that's the C. Let's change that color and go up a degree so it makes sense. Okay, maybe there's some. This is something that completed, and this 3-wave is correcting it. Now, the symmetry is not ideal, and we can look here and say, well, the length of time of that to go up relative to the length of time we've taken to correct it. Right, it wouldn't be your dream Elliott count, but it's there. Okay, so we've broken the 65 here, so that would be. it's problematic for us with regards to an Elliott, or pardon me, with regards to an algo play. But we have this 50, and is that a front run? Could be, or it's hard to know. All right, so we have low volume as we come down here. You can see the low volume node here. We don't quite make target. So we have to respect the possibility that this little move here is just another ABC, and that, right, if we just measure it off here, so from swing high to swing low, well, we've tagged the 38. All right, you can see here we've got some potential structure here, so we get this little, I'll do it this way. We get this little range here where we've got a couple of wicks coming in here, and then we note here, you see this low volume that we have here, this little low volume node that we find on the right side. So as I will remind you, it just becomes an area where the market's going to make a decision. So either it comes up here and is rejected quickly, or we're able to get right through it and come back towards an area where we have more market acceptance, right? So a move up here to the 618 wouldn't be terribly surprising. So if this is finished, well, you've got to dig a 5-wave structure out of that, which we probably can. You have to get maybe down to the 30-minute. Can you get 5 out of this? Well, it looks like you'd be pushing 1, 2. I'm going to put this here. That looks like 3 could be the shortest, so immediately looks like we have a problem. But when in doubt, let's measure it. So I'm going to take that off just to clear up the chart. So let's give it a quick measure. So just eyeballing, it looks like 3 is going to be too short. All right, so it is. All right, so we can't, this. Boy, I don't want to do this, but looking at where that went, so this still looks like a pretty strong candidate. Okay, so let's think about it. Well, if that's A, B, and we're going into a C, and we have, I'm going to take this off. So we'll do it this way. So if that's a 1, we've got to allow for a shallow 2. Right? We see them. It's lower probability. It doesn't invalidate the count. So what did we get? Did we get the 38? Just barely. A little push through the Vegas wave. Third target, which makes you think potentially now that this is, well, shit, sorry. Let's see, will that work? Yeah. Okay, so let's get this back over here as a contender for a 5th down here. 1, 2, 3 looks like A, B, C. So we'd be looking for, if it's going to stay as an impulse, we'd be looking for this here, and 50. There's the 618. Now, if we were to get on the other side of that, then you might have to reconsider the count here. But first test, let's see, do we have the ingredients here to turn this into maybe a diagonal? Although the structure's not going to look great here. Boy, there's not a clear count because you've got 3 here, so it looks like maybe A, B, but then it's not clear, right? So right now you defer to what's the algo play, right? Where can we identify the algorithm? Well, here this is significant. This is significant. All right, so if we're going to come up here, if this is going to continue to get up to this 50, that wouldn't invalidate us. So that's a potential decision point. So I would be looking here as well. So if we take this little swing here to this swing, just measure, looking for areas. So 1272 to the tick. So you're getting a little more confluence to suggest you might have some fairly stiff resistance here. And then of course we have just a little structure over here that we've run into. Potentially now a few wicks through it here. So certainly we have market acceptance as we've stalled here. So could be there's one more push down here to give us the 5. Of course the 2 and the if this is the 4, it's not great, right? So the length of time of the 2 relative to the 4 doesn't lend itself to the kind of symmetry that you'd hope for. But right now that's the count that I would lean into until we see some movement up here to maybe change this around a little bit. So if we can get through that 65, then maybe we have to come back and recount this on the way down and think, okay, well, what's the alternate? Let's assume that we're wrong. Right now, so I would categorize it this way. Primary count would be the anticipation of that. Right? But let's for the sake of exploring the alternate, let's say that we're wrong there. Right, and we get some sort of a 5-wave structure here, and somehow we've got to come back and maybe it's low probabilities to have a truncated 5th, but it's possible. but even that still doesn't look great for us, because then we're trying to dig. Better case would be, you'd have to do it something like this. You'd have to get, can't even tell if we've got enough in there to call that a 4. So you see the problem here. So maybe you could make this case here that you had a 3-4 and you came down here. I don't even like that. So maybe you had this, so it would have to be a double bottom. So you had some sort of a, well, it's just, there's not a great count here. So maybe we could pull it this way, trying to lean into the idea that we have a clean 5 here, 3-4. You know, just when it feels like you're forcing a count, that's usually would suggest sort of that little voice in the back of your head saying, it doesn't feel right. And so here, let's just look here. Is there any market geometry here to help us? Well, now I've got the modified shift on that. Let's go to original recipe and see how we look here. Well, again, just on the assumption that perhaps we have a low in. Well, we hold the 786, so maybe you could make the case that you've got a 1-2 and, oh, you know, so interesting note where we look, so as we look at, let me get this dialed in here exactly. Am I right on that? Right on it? Yeah. Look, so maybe you make this case, so maybe you could look at this and think, okay, well, if you're bullish, you could think 1-2, 3, 4, and 5. So we've already had, so note here, corner pocket down here has already been realized. So as I'll tell you, once you identify that pivot, if that's going to hold, it's 80% probability of making the median line, which we have done once. All right, so that corner pocket is already realized. Now, it doesn't mean we couldn't go again. And we might, considering the time factor here, if this is going to meander up here, we're getting too far away from the median line. Now, we could put a modifier on it. We might, if we're going to get a big push, maybe we bump into it up here at the 618. So all of that is there. I don't love this as my 3. It's not long enough to be a 3, so you'd have to be playing this as 1-2, 1-2. And if I look at that, that appears to be somewhat technical. So having realized that, well, let's leave that on there. So if we come down here, if that's another 1, what, right to the 50, hover, move. Okay, so we've got a target up here. So could we make this case? 1, 2 is in, and we're in the process. We're looking for a 3 up here. Well, I'm just going to put them up here as placeholders. Let me change that color so we don't lose track of what's what here. Let's go down to micro and let's go to blue. Okay, so let's measure it. If this is going to serve as our 1 and this is our 2, oh, we've got to get at least here to this former resistance, that pivot point that I was showing you earlier. All right, so this was our wave 1 here. Okay, so if we're going to get up to that kind of level, here's our 100%. So the minimum requirement would be to get 2 and test that level 1. So maybe you've got, even this doesn't look great. It looks more like a diagonal. So this is going to have to kick up here one more time to give us a 3rd. So perhaps you've got that. Then we'd have to rationalize how we're getting a 5 out of that. A, B, C into the 4. Again, feels like a little bit of a force fit. But if this is going to keep going, then the whole thing potentially now this would all move up to a higher degree. So we'd have 1, 2, 1, 2. Maybe we get our 3 relative to this 1. Then it starts looking better. We can say, okay, well, all right, 1, 2. Shit, it's too soon to call anything there. I mean, even down here on the 30-minute, it doesn't look great. But if it's going to go, then we at least could make a case that we had a 3rd underway. We would have taken out the wave 1 high. All of that, those are the building blocks for, okay, maybe I've got some sort of an ugly finish here. Let's go back out to a 2-hour and put this in context, see what it looks like. Well, if this is going to go up and we're going to get, so this would all be moving up. All of this moves up, right? So good news for bulls. So we'd be looking for a 3rd up here in this range, right? Here's our something along those lines. So a minimum requirement is to get here for this to be the 3rd of the 3rd. So we'd be looking for, on the larger degree, I know this gets a little hard to see, we'd be looking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so that's the pattern we'd be looking for, and how that fits in with the median lines will be kind of interesting to see how we get there. All right, so it's a start on it, given, so you have to allow for this, which is slightly problematic with this count. So there's the bullish case, right? So maybe we're going to need, this is going to have to just continue to charge and march on. So 1, 2, 1, 2. Can we get the full third out of that? We're going to have some stiff resistance on the way. So just to reiterate it here as we put it all back together, look where we're targeting that third. We're going to run right into the 618 from a dominant swing high, swing low. So we know likely algo participation should we get there. Now, if we get there in conjunction with the median line, well, that would be an interesting setup for the, let me zoom in here so you can see this a little bit better. That would be an interesting scenario for this kind of a thing. So if we're going to come back down to the 4 and then go up and finish the 5 of the third, well, then we'd have the third potentially in play here. Let me take that up so you can see it better. Let's go to, all right. So then we'd have 1, here's the 1, 2, 3, expect the 4, 38 would be the target, and then up for the 5. Now we've got something to work with. So if we were to see something like that, now again, right, a lot has to happen here for us to come off of this low with an impulsive structure. But right, don't fret about missing it all. If all of this comes to pass, let's get all of this out of here. Get all of this done. If we're going to get this count, 3, 4, and 5, well, so this would be our 4. Then we've just got a giant one wave, right? So then we'd have 1, 2 would be coming down here. 3, 4, and 5 is just placeholders. Let me go. Oh, here I'll do it in yellow, and we'll go up a degree. All right. Then we'd have now we've got something to work with. Now we've got a potential 1. All right. Well, if we break through all of that, right? A lot of ifs. We're going to go swing low to swing high. Again, I'm just freestyling here. All right, there's a nice low volume node at the 50, right? Potentially now we get that kind of action. So here's the longer term play that we've got to start seeing some of this action, right? Then you're pushing for the third up there. So what's that target of? 63 cents. Buy be down here at approximately 50. But a lot has to happen here. Let's get this up here. So there's a potential roadmap for bulls with the acknowledgement that this is a difficult to complete this count, right? So it's a little ugly here to try and squeeze 5 out of that, but we do have that unrealized algo target down here. So again, just putting it all back together on this larger degree. Are we close enough here? Is that enough? Well, that's the case that you're making. Certainly could be, right? So that we had enough here, and now with some strength and some of the fundamental story coming in, looking better for Ripple. Maybe we get this move, but you've got to respect the possibility here that with this 50, we still have, well, we'd have a two-way. So this, if you allow for that as being a realized target, and it was just a front run on that target, well, then we can't ignore this one. All right, so this, which would put us down here at 30 cents. So this will be the tell. Does this keep marching? How do we do when we do? First, can we get through the 50? How do we do at the 618? Can we get through that 65? That would certainly confirm that we've got a third underway, or the potential for a third, right? Then, of course, you'd have the all the way. You'd have to get through that one. And so you put the whole thing together, and maybe there's a roadmap there for bulls. All right? It certainly, it could be. Could be. So where's the tell? Well, first we got to get up here and get to a 3. Do we get a little 3 wave into a 4? There'd be the next opportunity on the long side to be a buyer into that, looking for this trade. I wouldn't want to be too far beyond that wave 1 high. So you'd have this as a target. So there's 6 to 1. It'd be just underneath that. Let's give that a little bit more. They call it 5.2 approximately to 1. If you get the 4 setting up here, 4 into the 5. Right, I'd be taking profit there, anticipating the 4 to come, and then you've got the 4 into the 5 again. All right, so maybe you get a little something like that. 4.6 to 1 approximately. That's how I'd construct it. I think that there's not enough to be long here. So as I look at that, I say too late to buy, too soon to sell. So I'd let that reveal itself a little bit more. Are we going to get a good 3? We retrace for the 4, come to the 38. That's very tradable. All right, that's what I see, guys. I hope that helps in some small way. Just a reminder, all right, of course, you want to learn more about how we approach the market, this methodology. We demonstrate it here kind of as building a case, right? So we want to show you how the market responds to this and let you draw your own conclusions as to whether or not this would be valuable to really have the insight into how to do this very consistently, regardless of asset, regardless of time frame. Doesn't matter. It's always the same, right? It's just fear and greed. It's human nature. That's all we're doing is just tracking the fear and the greed and using the Elliott Wave, the algo pulls, and the market geometry to try and organize it. Otherwise, yeah, it's just chaos, right? Roll the dice. Heads I buy, tails I sell. Okay, guys, I'll wrap it there.